Welcome back. I'm Travis with Linux Academy. Now, over the last couple lessons, we've been working with how to go and create containers. We've looked at some flags we can use with a Docker container run to go and alter the behavior of our container that we're creating. We've gone and used the name flag to go and name our container. We've also used the D flag to go and detach our container and run it as a background process. And we've also used the capital P flag, which is used to go and publish all exposed ports with a random port. So in this lesson, we're going to be going into a little bit more details about ports. This includes exposing them as well as publishing them. Now let's go and start off by executing a docker run-d nginx. This is going to go and create an nginx container, but we haven't set up any port mappings for it. When I run a docker container ls, you can see that our container is created, and we do have a TCP port for port 80. Now, if I go and execute curl on localhost, we get back a connection refused. And the reason why is because we don't have a port mapping set up for port 80. Now, if I go and execute a docker inspect on the container, I can go and get the private IP here. Now I can go and execute a curl on the IP. And as you can see, we're getting the contents of the nginx welcome page. Let's start off by talking about exposing ports. By going and exposing ports, we make them available to be mapped. We still need to go and remap them either by using the P flag or the capital P flag. So let's go and look at an example here. All we're going to do is execute a Docker container run. I'm using the -d flag to make sure that this runs as a background process. And I'm using the expose flag to open up port 3000 on the container. Let's go ahead and run this. So when I go and list my containers, you can see that my new container has 2 ports, one for port 80 and one for port 3000. And again, all we've done is we've just exposed port 3000. We haven't mapped anything to it. Now, since I don't need these containers, I'm just going to go and do some cleanup real quick. Okay, this time let's go and expose port 3000, but let's go and create a mapping for it at the same time. So I'm going to go and use the P flag. The first port that we specify is the port that will be running on the host machine. Just to show a difference, I'm going to use port 80. We then go and separate things using a colon. Next, we define the container port that we want to map port 80 to. In this instance, it's going to be port 3000. So let's go and run this. Now let's go and take a look at our container. As you can see, we have port 80 on the host being mapped over to port 3000 on the container. Now, if we go and curl localhost :3000, you'll see that we are getting connection refused. And the reason why is because we don't have a process that is listening on port 3000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and delete my container. And this time, we're going to go and map port 8080 to 80 on the container. Notice that I'm still exposing port 3000, but we're not going to map anything to it because there's no process listening there. And when I go and execute a curl on localhost port 8080, you can see that we're getting the nginx welcome page. Now we do have the ability to go and map both TCP ports and UDP ports, but we need to go and specify them separately. Now, because we already have a container that has a port mapping set up for 8080, we're going to be using 81 mapping over to port 80 on the container using TCP, and then we'll do the exact same thing for UDP. Also, as a side note, we can use the P flag multiple times to go and publish multiple ports. So if our container had port 80 as well as 443 exposed, we can map both of them when we go and execute our Docker container run. So let's go and execute curl just to make sure that everything is working properly. And we do get the expected results back. Now we do have the ability to go and randomly assign a port from our host and map it to the port on our container. And we do this by using the capital P flag. If we go and take a look at the container Frosty Wilson, we can see that port 32768 is being mapped to port 80. The last command we'll be looking at is docker container port. This allows us to go and see all the port mappings for a specified container. As you can see, we have 2 port mappings here. We have port 8081 mapping over to port 80 for TCP as well as UDP. So just to quickly recap, we learned how we can go and expose ports on a container by using the expose flag. We also learned how to go and publish ports using the lowercase p flag, which allows us to go and map a host port that we specify to a container port that we also specify. And then we could use the capital P flag to randomly map ports from the host to the container. Additionally, we also learned about the docker container ports command, which is a helpful command to give us all the port mappings for a specified container. Okay, so that's all I have for this lesson. Go ahead and mark it complete.